media platforms. We'll start tonight, though, with Sky, and we're going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons and their draft and looking at how well they did or how poorly they did, I suppose. In the first round, taking with pick 8, the surprise pick, quarterback Michael Penix. Round 2, I'm going to real butcher this, but defensive tackle Rook horror. I think I did one too many horrors there. Round 3, outside linebacker Braden Trice. Round 4, defensive tackle Brandon Doris. Round 5, linebacker J.D. Bertrand. Round 6, running back Jace McClellan. Round 6, wide receiver Casey Washington. Round 6 as well, defensive tackle Zion Logue. Let's start with the obvious. So we sort of briefly spoke about this in the review show we did the day after the draft with myself and Adam. But Sky, we'll start with you. I mean, Michael Penix, that pick at number 8 was the shock of the night. Maybe the biggest shock of the modern era.
Yeah, I agree. I think we said before going live, didn't we? We can't really think of a more shocking one in recent memory. I know we'll always talk about recency bias, but what was the need for that? I also don't know what the need was to get a running back in the 6th round if you were that hell-bent on developing a quarterback. I mean, I'm happy the Patriots got Milton, but could the Falcons not have got him instead and actually use the 8th pick on Dallas Turner? But yeah, when I go through all of the picks, I'm pretty much not sold on any of them other than Trice. I think he's had 16 sacks over the past 2 seasons, but I'm not even going to butcher Rook's surname, but even that was a reach, trading up multiple picks to get him when they probably could have stayed and got him anyway. So yeah, I think GM could be on the chopping block if it all goes wrong, because when you've got the talent that they've got, even if they have a successful season, you don't want this to have a knock-on effect, and then next draft there'll be question marks again, right, about making more poor decisions.
Johnny, the first thing basically out of that, as soon as Michael Penix got picked by the Atlanta Falcons, was you've just paid Kirk Cousins a lot of money. You're going to have him around for a long time. Are you in the camp that this pick was really quite unnecessary and also maybe a bit of a reach, I suppose some people are feeling, and also what are Atlanta thinking here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think nothing against Michael Penix. I think from what we saw, the tape, he's able to throw a beautiful football. He's obviously a very good player, and I'm hopeful that he will go on to have, a very illustrious NFL career. But the Falcons have just given a huge contract to a quarterback, yes, who is aging, but let's not forget this isn't a complete team. They have so many other areas that they needed to address this offseason. And, Penix was viewed as, a potential day 2 pick, even whether the Falcons, we obviously saw, how many quarterbacks, 6 quarterbacks go in first 15 picks, whether the Falcons wanted to take a quarterback at some stage this in the draft. I just feel they could have gone about it in a completely different way, whether that be, potentially trading back a little bit, and recuperating a bit more for resource to build elsewhere. Forgive me again, the horror who pick, even still, trading picks away to reach for someone who, from what I can see, was mocked quite a bit later in the draft, maybe potentially, a late date, an early round 3 pick. This team has got a lot of question marks, I still think, particularly on defense. I think they improved last year, but they should have been. I don't know. It was so infuriating, I think, for watching that on Thursday to see what they did. This may turn out in, we might be looking back at this as, why were we complaining? Michael Penix might go on and be a multiple Super Bowl winner with the Falcons. But yeah, it's so confusing given, I think the needs that the Falcons have elsewhere and the big contract that they gave Kirk just a handful of weeks ago.
Well, it's just like when Zach Wilson went on to win multiple Super Bowls with the New York Jets, isn't it? I mean, it's the exact same, really, Johnny. All about
you never know. You never know. He still could.
It may be on another team. Now, Andrew, the biggest Michael Penix supporter, advocator, We didn't speak on last week after the draft happened, but we did speak about this Michael Penix pick, and you provided a very, very decent argument as to why this shouldn't be as complained about, ostracized by the NFL community at this pick being ridiculous. You gave a very balanced argument, and we must point out saying that we all quite rate Penix as a player. It's more the pick and the position that we people have had a problem with. Everyone has said, well, Michael Penix is a cracking quarterback, great college career, a great guy, it seems, as well, and they wish him all the best. But Andrew, why don't you try and convince us and the rest of our audience as to why this isn't a bad pick?
Well, I might not do a great job of convincing people that it isn't a bad pick, because I do hate the pick. I especially hate it for Michael Penix. But when it happened and the day one was over, I kind of went, let's try and look at this realistically and see if there's any logic behind it. And can I actually put some logic to it? And as much logic as I do put to it, I then have counter arguments as well. But, you know, the Cousins deal, it's, from what I can see, if you're bringing Penix in, for me, it's a 2-year deal, isn't it? If they cut him before the 2025 season, they lose 12 million, I think it was. So if in 18 months it's not working, they can roll out Penix, they can cut Cousins after the season finishes, and you know it's fine. They've got their successor, not a problem. It's also, you got to remember that Raheem Morris came from a team in the Rams that had an older quarterback that, you know, would struggle with injuries. And when he went down, their team then became useless and rubbish, and the season was a write-off. And I think the owner is probably in his head gone, we were that bad at quarterback last year, and everyone said we were one quarterback away from a decent quarterback away from qualifying for the playoffs. Why don't we double down, have two in the building? You know, there's that safety net if Cousins doesn't come back in time, or if his injury reoccurs, then we're not going to be that shit show that you saw last season, and we've got Penix who's plug in and play. So they were my logical things behind it. You can never have too many quarterbacks, but why spend 100 million guaranteed on Cousins? Also, why on the day of the draft tell him moments before the pick, when if they fell in love with him in the offseason, they could have sorted this out, they could have spoke about it. And I do think this is now going to cause a bit of an issue in terms of Cousins is always going to be looking over his shoulder. You know, one bad game and the fans are going to be like, well, we've just drafted a young guy that could have won the Heisman Trophy. That's, you know, he wasn't a project at college. The guy was virtually unbeaten for 2 years and got to a national championship. He's already good. He's already fantastic. So he's going to be looking over his shoulder and going, one bad game and I might be out. So, you know, as much logic as I put behind it, there's enough argument to say logic isn't the right thing, because financially it's got to come into it. Locker room's got to come into it. The big thing I would say is I don't think Cousins is going to be fit for practice, the OTAs. So who's taking the first team reps in the preseason? It's Michael Penix with the youngsters. Is Michael Penix as a youngster throwing the ball with London and Pitts and everybody else with Bijan? Is he going to grow a relationship? The guys really like him and go, we've got no allegiance to Kirk Cousins. We like this. So that again really stirs some issues up. But I understand can't have too many quarterbacks in the quarterback room. It's always good to have a good backup, especially when you've got a guy who's aging and getting injured. We only see his contract as 18 months max. We're never going to be in a position to draft high for a quarterback again. So that makes sense. But all the other factors just lean towards what's the thought. And then after they made that pick in the second, I was like, actually, maybe I should take the logic away, because there's no logic in that second pick. So maybe they just didn't know what they were doing and just gone, do you know what, we'll try and do what Detroit did, and we'll just take the people we want when we want them. But not really the same. So sorry, Fred, I haven't kind of give you that battle that you wanted of me going, yeah, this is a great pick and this is why it should be. But I did try to get some logic out of that pick.
That's what you can ask for is logic. And to be fair, we did do an episode last season all about how the backup quarterback position now is like more fun. It's so important now. Throughout the NFL, we are seeing it so much more. We are seeing players injured more, unfortunately, and it matters. And if you have a good backup, you can still go really far. Really appreciate comments from Football Talk with Bo. He says, you don't know exactly when Cousins will be coming back from injury is really the only thing that makes most sense. If they fell in love in the offseason with Michael Penix, they should have grabbed a guy like Drew Lock. I mean, assuming that saying, keep the money, have someone where you can compete on a level playing field. Whereas, when we look at it in the grand scheme, that Kirk Cousins is the guy, whether you like that or not, he is going to be. The money speaks. And also, Christian Fidel, thank you. You lads are always on it, loving every bit. Really appreciate that, my man.
Fred,
Adam.
Fred, just before you go to Adam, just to answer that question we got in about the offseason. The guys start scouting the players that they want this week and next week. That's when they start the process. It's also why Howie Roseman, who we probably might talk about later, traded a load of picks to get them for next year because he's already started scouting the players in next year. There's loads of depth in next year. So, yeah, just to go to that, it would have been in then. And I've also, after you spoke to Adam, I've got two teams that sort of swapped their off seasons round.